Hello and welcome to the deep dive. Today we're setting our sights on a major player in British banking, Santander UK. You definitely know them from the high street. You see their digital ads and, of course, those Spanish roots. And right now it really feels like Santander is, well, navigating some pretty significant shifts.
Absolutely. Santander UK is a fascinating case study, really. How these big established banks are trying to adapt. It's a landscape that's just changing so fast.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're going to try and unpack exactly where Santander UK stands today. We'll explore the big strategic moves they've been making, branch closures, that huge push into digital. We'll take a close look at their financial health, see how they're stacking up against those super agile fintechs, get a feel for what customers are actually experiencing, and ultimately try to understand their broader role in the UK economy. The mission really is to get a clearer picture of what the future might hold for this, well, household name in banking. And to guide us through all this, we're thrilled to have Daniel Mercer with us. Daniel's a highly experienced financial strategist, over 15 years in the sector, previously with Deloitte, and now an independent advisor really focused on European retail banks. Daniel, a very warm welcome.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Okay, Daniel, let's start with the basics, perhaps. Our listener probably sees the Santander brand everywhere, maybe has a mortgage with them. Can you just paint a picture? Where does Santander UK fit in the whole UK banking scene?
Certainly. So Santander UK is the British arm of Banco Santander, the Spanish banking giant. Here in the UK, they're one of the largest retail and commercial banks. Huge customer base, over 14 million. Their story here really kicked off, you could say, back in 2004. That's when Abbey National was created through a merger. And then they grew significantly, taking over Alliance and Leicester and Bradford and Bingley. So yeah, they've built up into a real powerhouse.
Right, so a very established foundation, that strong high street presence,
Mm.
but also a major player in key things like mortgages, savings, and lending to small businesses too.
Precisely. Yeah, they have a significant footprint across a whole range of really essential financial services.
And it feels like the conversation around Santander recently has moved beyond just, what accounts they offer
Yeah.
to some pretty big changes in how they actually operate.
That's a very good point. Yeah. In the last few years, Santander UK has been actively reshaping things. This includes those quite visible branch closures we've all seen, also substantial investment in digital capabilities, and this kind of ongoing thinking about the right size and shape for their physical network. This whole strategic evolution is really kind of the core of what we're talking about today.
Let's really dig into those branch closures then. It's hard to miss, especially when you hear stories about towns where Santander was literally the last bank left. What are the main reasons driving this pretty dramatic shift?
Well, there are really three main drivers, I'd say. First, and probably the biggest, is just the fundamental change in how we all bank.
Yeah.
The huge uptake of mobile apps, online banking.
Yeah.
It just means far fewer people are walking into branches for everyday stuff.
Right, less footfall.
Exactly.
Second, like any big business, Santander faces constant pressure to, well, cut costs. And maintaining a large branch network is a massive overhead.
Sure. Expensive real estate. And finally, it's important to remember, this isn't just Santander doing this. It's a much broader industry trend. You see Barclays, HSBC, Lloyds, they're all reducing branch numbers too. It points to a sort of systemic shift in how banking services are delivered now.
And what's the actual impact on the ground for the people and communities who relied on those branches? I'm thinking particularly about, say, rural areas or maybe older customers who aren't as comfortable with online banking.
Yeah, and this is where you see the biggest challenges, the potential downsides of this shift. Santander points to alternatives, sure. They have mobile banking vans, telephone support, partnerships with the post office for basic transactions.
Right.
But critics, quite rightly, point out that a mainly digital model can lead to financial exclusion for some people. It raises really important questions about fair access to essential financial services in this increasingly digital world.
So if we step back a bit, has this move, fewer branches, more digital, been a net positive for Santander overall, do you think?
It's tricky. Financially, yes. In terms of immediate cost savings, it's likely helped their bottom line.
Right.
But when you weigh that against the potential damage to brand trust, the feeling of reduced accessibility, especially for vulnerable groups, the picture gets much more, let's say, nuanced. It's a clear trade-off, really. Operational efficiency versus, community presence and customer goodwill.
Let's switch focus slightly to Santander's financial health itself. You mentioned cost savings, but what's the overall picture looking like right now?
Well, Santander UK's recent performance has actually been quite solid. good profits showing up. That's been helped partly by rising interest rates, which generally boost bank margins.
Okay.
However, they are still grappling with their cost-to-income ratio. That's a key
Right.
metric.
Explain that quickly.
Essentially, it measures how much it costs the bank to make a pound of income. A higher ratio means lower efficiency. And Santander, like others in the sector, is also facing higher regulatory costs and, crucially, pretty fierce competition, especially from those digital-only banks like Monzo and Starling.
Which brings us to a really key question, I think, one I'm sure listeners wonder about. How committed is Banco Santander to the UK market long term? We hear core market a lot, but then there were those sort of whispers you mentioned around 2022, 2023 about maybe restructuring or mergers. What's your take?
That is, yeah, a crucial question. Officially, like you said, Banco Santander always repeats that the UK is a core market in their global strategy. But it's true, there was definitely speculation, quite a bit of talk in the financial world around 2022, 2023, talk about potential restructuring, maybe even consolidating their UK operations with another bank. These sorts of whispers often pop up when a business is making big strategic changes and facing competitive heat.
But based on what you see now, you don't foresee them actually pulling out of the UK altogether?
No, I don't think a full exit is the most probable scenario. My reading is that their strategy is really about adapting, evolving their model within the UK. That probably means, yes, continuing to trim the branch network, but also focusing more on partnerships with fintechs to boost their digital side, reach new customers perhaps, and just an ongoing drive to make operations leaner, more efficient. It seems like they're aiming for a more agile, digitally focused presence rather than a complete departure.
Right. And speaking of that fintech revolution, how exactly is Santander trying to, keep pace with the likes of Monzo and Starling? Those guys really shook things up.
They have been active, yeah. They're pursuing innovation. They've launched digital-first things like PagoFX, that's their app for international money transfers, and Xenia, which is their move into the buy now, pay later space, which is obviously huge now. They've also been investing quite a bit in open banking, which basically allows secure data sharing to create more tailored services, and also using AI for things like fraud detection, improving security.
But it sounds like there's maybe still a gap when it comes to that really smooth, intuitive user experience that the digital native banks are known for.
That is a critical point, yeah.
Huh.
While Santander is investing heavily, they are still working with established, often complex, old IT systems built up over years.
Legacy systems.
Exactly, legacy systems. And they can sometimes make it harder to be as agile or achieve that seamless integration that companies like Monzo, who built everything from scratch in the cloud, can offer.
So it's kind of like trying to steer a big cruise ship in the same water as a load of nimble speedboats. Both get there, but one's way more agile.
That's a great analogy, actually,
Yeah.
yes. Santander has the scale, the established customer base, a broader range of products that comes with being a big traditional bank.
Right.
But that size can also mean they're a bit slower to adapt, to roll out new tech, or respond super quickly to changing customer demands compared to those leaner fintech startups.
Let's shift now to the people at the center of the Santander UK's customers.
Mhm.
What's the general feeling towards the bank right now? What are people saying?
It's a bit of a mixed picture, to be honest.
Yeah.
On the plus side, lots of customers still value their competitive mortgage rates, for example. And they appreciate that there is still a physical presence, even if it's smaller.
Okay.
However, customer service ratings in some recent surveys have dipped a bit. And there's definitely been some frustration around the shift to app-based services, people reporting login problems, delays, getting queries sorted.
And has their image taken a hit from things like the branch closures?
Well, they did get positive recognition during the pandemic, for helping customers with loan forbearance and supporting businesses.
Yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, the ongoing branch closures and maybe more reliance on overseas call centers. It seems to be feeding into a feeling among some customers that Santander is becoming a bit more impersonal, maybe a bit faceless. And that can chip away at that crucial customer connection and trust.
And in today's world where switching banks is actually pretty easy now, does that changing sentiment pose a real risk to their customer loyalty long term?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hugely competitive market now, so many options.
Yeah.
And the hassle factor of switching accounts has really been reduced by regulators. So customer loyalty can be quite fragile. If customers feel consistently let down or frustrated with digital services or just feel that lack of personal connection, they're definitely more likely now to look elsewhere.
Okay, zooming out one last time then.
Yeah.
Let's think about Santander's wider role. its impact on the whole UK economy, beyond just day-to-day banking for individuals.
Yeah, their influence definitely goes beyond just basic retail banking. They're a really vital source of funding and support for small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs, across the UK. So we know SMEs are like the engine room of the economy.
Absolutely.
They're also getting more involved in green finance initiatives, playing a part in the UK's move towards a more sustainable economy.
Mm.
And on top of that, Santander invests in various programs focused on financial literacy, promoting financial inclusion in different communities.
And they're also a massive employer, right? Although I guess that's changing too with all the digital stuff.
That's correct. Still a major employer in the UK, jobs in lots of places. But yes, like many established banks, that strategic shift towards digital, towards automation,
Yeah.
it does inevitably mean some job cuts as branch networks shrink and processes get streamlined.
Wow.
So their impact is both economic through lending and investment, and also social through jobs and those community initiatives.
Daniel, this has been a really, really insightful deep dive into Santander UK. If you had to boil down their future in the UK into just one sentence for our listener, what would be your key takeaway?
One sentence. I'd say Santander's future success in the UK likely hinges on navigating that complex digital shift while somehow keeping meaningful customer connections alive.
Okay.
And effectively meeting the needs of a really diverse customer base. It's about finding that sweet spot between tech efficiency and the human touch, really.
A fantastic summary. Daniel, thank you so much for sharing your expertise on the deep dive today. Your insights have been incredibly helpful in getting a handle on Santander's position.
It was my pleasure entirely. Thank you for having me. And thank you for watching Westferry Times.
And a big thank you to you for joining us for this deep dive into Santander UK. If you found this useful and you'd like more in-depth analysis like this, please do subscribe to the deep dive. Until our next exploration, goodbye.